in a positive way, right? I'm always worried about using the word competition because I don't want it to mean like pushing other people down, right? But when it's done in a positive, fun way, it is a good source of stimulation for them, right? It helps them work with their imagination. And if you remember some earlier, for those of you who were here, and for those of you who were not here, I will restate what it is. But we were talking about the 21st century skills that learners will have to have. And one of the things that they were saying in this document that the Bureau of Education put together in the United States is that students have to be creative. They have to be able to think outside the box. Not just critical thinking, but actually creation, right? And so what we see here is some of being able to be creative and to look at things in a more playful way is stimulated by the use of games in class. So we're fitting in some of these 21st century skills, right? Okay, so the nice thing is when we have competition, imagination, and excitement put together, the learner internalizes or takes ownership over what it was that you were practicing, right? So we were just saying it's nice to drill as a form of memorization technique so that they then have ownership, because once they've drilled it enough, they can repeat it on their own. So students see the game discourse as a space where they can suggest new rules. Basically what this means is they're not, when they're in the game, if it's going really well, they're not thinking about all of the grammar issues that they have. They're just being in the moment, playing, using English, and playing with English in English. And it lowers some of the affective filters that they might have about communicating in the language. So this is one of the reasons why we also want to play games, right? We reinforce vocabulary. We encourage them to think in English instead of doing translation back and forth, because translation slows them down. So with the games that we have today, the first one that we'll go over and the second one that we'll go over forces them to think in English, because if they're not thinking in English, they're too slow and they're not going to do well in the game. And then already the students may be playing any of these games. You probably will know a lot of the games that we're talking about today as well. Okay, so this is just to sum up more or less what you've just said. Anything that you'd like to add to this list? Yeah.
Maybe games are also great for breaking routine at the lesson, especially when you're in the middle of the lesson,
Right.
they are, kind of falling asleep.
Yeah.
And to wake them up, I like especially those ones when we get the move. Stand up and the mix kind of cocktail parties, something like that. And after such breaks, they work more effectively. You may return to your lesson and they will be more productive.
Very true.
For kinesthetic learners,
Absolutely.
they are effective as well.
Absolutely. So that was great because we were just talking about how we use games in the classroom to break things up. So it could be an introduction to a topic, review of key concepts, practice vocabulary and grammar, icebreaker, any of these, like you were saying, cocktail party, etc. We use them in order to keep life exciting in the classroom so they're not falling asleep, right? And or if they're already rowdy and it's hard to control them, do a game. If you can't, if you understand that there's something exciting that happened and they're not focused, play a game. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is categories. How many of you know categories? So this is a game that they mentioned, but this is actually a game I have played for the past 2 New Year's Eves in a row, because it's a game that we actually play, and it's a lot of fun. So what we do is we start with a list of different categories, and I'll give this to you in just a minute, but just for you to have the visual, the game board for students would look something like this. You have a list of different categories. You can either decide them ahead of time, specific to the topics you want to review, like colors, animals, people in the family, whatever. And then you have them basically, you pick a letter or they pick a letter, it has to be random, and then they write whatever is the first thing that comes to their mind under each of the categories. So it would look something like this. And it's hard because they have 1 minute to capture one word for all of the categories. So it's quite fun. Can everybody see the board here? Okay.